Boxing is one of the most scientific sports, and originally its structure includes 9 sciences. Well, sciences like physics, mathematics, biology and chemistry are obvious. But a science such as, for example, psychology, which also includes conflictology, should be considered from the very first training sessions. In other words, the introduction already begins with psychology. I would say that it is the science of human behavior, of the behavior of the soul. What is our soul made of? There are 5 parts to the soul. The first is probably self-awareness. This is how a person perceives themselves. It is their personal fortress, their personal stance, the way he perceives himself. To elaborate on this, my coach, the first thing that struck me, he asked me, there are two categories of people, strong and weak. Why do we need strong people? The first thing that comes to mind is that, well, the strong are probably supposed to protect the weak. But what is a weak person? So does that mean someone who is disabled? I've met people with disabilities who were incredibly strong. They actually taught me what real strength is. So probably not that. Maybe a weak person is, say, a drunkard. That's a vice, and that's weakness. Drug addicts, that's also a kind of vice. That's also weakness. And if you look at it from this perspective, then a strong person is only needed so that the weak don't destroy the world. Strength is intelligence. Strength is our insight, our ability to survive. Secondly, after self-awareness comes your character. It is precisely character. The ability to deal with contradictions, because boxing at its core is a very contradictory sport, and where an ordinary person might find it unbearable for a boxer, that's exactly the place where he begins to focus, where all his faculties become mobilized. Where everyone else is afraid, a boxer can take a step forward. You can strengthen your character through your attitude toward the subject, through the way you study your discipline. A lot goes into character. All of this shows up in training, it's all visible, and the coach should initially build the methodology based on your character. Because in boxing there are some very difficult exercises and some very simple ones. And it's by appealing to this that you can reveal character. Don't rush into individual training. First go through group training, because all the real value is found in the collective. And for example, when you're paired with a strong, very strong opponent, and you're the weaker one in boxing. The strong always learns from the weak. That is, if you pair a strong fighter with another strong fighter, most likely it will just turn into a brawl, a fight, because each one will be trying to prove they're stronger. But when a strong fighter is paired with a weaker one from the start, he doesn't need to prove his strength. He just needs to improve his skills, drawing on his own character, passing on his experience, and showing the weaker one what a strong fighter can do. Let me emphasize, this is a master class. He demonstrates and teaches through guidance. In other words, it's a very calm situation where the champion explains to you, for example, that you need to adjust your stance or bend down a little here, and that this will help you. And of course, this approach works better. Never. A weak person cannot learn from someone just like themselves. He must always look up to the strong. To calm a strong person, you need to pair him with someone weaker so he can test all his skills. For the weaker one, it's a very good example of how things should be done. The third part of the soul is our mind, or let's say our intellect. This is a very important part in boxing because, well, if you're not smart, you won't survive. The most important and fundamental factor in a fight is not the motivation to win or lose, but first and foremost, what you need to do is survive the fight. And that's why the sharpness of your mind here needs to be heightened many times over. In other words, you need to know all the ways in and out of the situations you get forced into. And that's why the whole complexity of the mind is about considering many options. Even if some of those options are flawed, you still have to take them into account. But the difference between I think and I know is simply enormous. While you are thinking, you are training. In other words, you are searching for options. But when you already know, you act. Because action is something very precise and coordinated. Our whole body, every cell, must act very, very accurately. Initially, the strategy is formed in the mind. It's a calculation. And your strategy needs to be as smart as possible. Because once again, if you don't calculate your strength or distribute it incorrectly, you will most likely suffer as a result. It's very interesting, but boys usually get stuck precisely on this smart aspect because of the chemical state that changes, including changes to consciousness. When a person is afraid, very rapid chemical reactions take place inside them. And boys very often confuse the state of adrenaline with fear, because adrenaline essentially is something that shuts off consciousness, so that we act purely on knowledge, that is, on mechanics. In other words, consciousness is switched off, and only one thing is clear to you. You need to run, and you run 7 times faster than you normally could. Here's a very important point. You need to reprogram from the perspective of your mind all your chemical states so that you know them very well. Because there is adrenaline. Yes, it definitely helps. And this state, these are the first 30 seconds when you go out, because your heart is pounding like crazy. Everyone starts to kind of forget their plan of action. To prevent this, you need to understand what noradrenaline is. Noradrenaline, for example, doesn't shut off your consciousness, because noradrenaline is responsible for athletic rage, or as they say, competitive aggression. And you also need to learn how to tap into this, so to speak, with some skill. For example, one of the methods my coach told me about when I was very nervous and would forget the action plan he set for me before a fight was that during training he would simply bring me up to the punching bag and say, "Now, hit the bag." And say to yourself, now I'm going to have some fun. That is, now I'm going to have some fun. And under this idea of having fun, I would put in the program of exercises or series or some striking combinations, so that when I went into the fight, I would tell myself, now I'm going to have some fun. And the whole program, in terms of noradrenaline, I wouldn't forget the material. That is, it was as if during training I started doing everything at the maximum level. That's why the brain needs to be able to handle all these different states. This is very important. And I'll say it again. Here the coach's task, the coach's qualifications must be extremely high. Because every coach, first and foremost, is obliged to be a psychologist. At the very beginning, it's very important to study the coach's methodology, so that this methodology helps you develop your own approach. That's what psychology is about. Why do we examine all these aspects of the soul? Because it's important to strengthen a person to such a degree that they find an inner coach within themselves, one who guides them, helps them, and leads them to precise, proven things. At the beginning of the journey, this is very difficult to do, because a lack of knowledge about the subject a lack of understanding of certain things, certain defenses, certain forms. All of this is very distracting. The fourth part of the soul is emotions. This is how we express ourselves, or conversely, what we hide from being expressed. Our joy, our tears, our fears, all of these are emotions. And now I'd like to talk about fear. Fear is a very interesting emotion. It's like, as D'Amato said, when Mike Tyson explained, it's like fire. It can warm you, but it can also destroy you. So here, yes, you need to perceive fear from the perspective of unconditional friendship. You need to study it, to really study it. But we can study fear through other emotions. In other words, emotions can only be treated with other emotions. That is, other kinds of interventions just won't be as effective. So if a person is afraid, you need to calm them down. And you should also use emotions to do that. So first of all, why was a training program invented for boxers? First and foremost, to calm the boxer down, to get rid of all those negative things that get in his way. Rage, confusion, panic, gambling, the things that drive him into a dead end. He just freezes. He doesn't know what to do. That's what fear does. It doesn't just paralyze you. It breaks down your entire defense system. Fear can be overcome with experience. That is, with an exact understanding of the situation. When you're afraid, you won't be able to think quickly. You'll rely on the things you've trained well and developed thoroughly. The first way to conquer fear is strength. If a person is strong and believes themselves to be strong, they have a better chance because they already rely on their strength. Speed. If a person, for example, is fast during jiaoshi in training, this quality, like gold, comes to the surface. Speed. He is very fast. This can also give you a certain confidence and help you overcome fear. All of your special skills that we develop in master classes, for example, a football player juggling the ball. Why does he juggle the ball? To feel confident. In other words, we overcome fear with confidence. A man at his core should be a warrior. A warrior is a state of constant training. There may be no war, but the person is preparing for it. That is, he prepares for a war that doesn't exist. He considers all possible scenarios wrong. It could go like this, or like that, or another way. What makes a soldier different? Is it just that he was given a rifle or a machine gun? Shoot. He shoots. The cartridges are out. And that's it. For him, the war is over. He throws away his rifle and runs away. It's not like that for a warrior. That is, his very disposition within his character, mind, and self-awareness leads him right into the most intense, most fascinating heat of the action. Where everyone else retreats, he does not. And here, the ability to master your fear is the ability to survive. Survival is a very serious motive. If you start getting worked up, again, from an emotional standpoint, I'm going to tear him apart. I'm going to defeat him now. But that's the wrong way to see things. In other words, it's a misjudgment of your opponent. Because your opponent might turn out to be very cunning, very perceptive. So guys, rely only on the things you know well, the things you are good at. Let me emphasize once again the master class. It is necessary, and only it will give you confidence. And your fear will, in a way, become your friend. It will tell you where you need to be cautious. The fifth part of the soul is conscience. It is probably conscience that God himself invested the most in. Because examples of conscience are like that independent judge who sets priorities in your life. The first thing you are taught in boxing, well, one of the first, is a discipline called respect. You must learn to respect your partner no matter what, to respect your coach no matter what, to respect your corner man, your teammate, who helps you prepare for the fight. You must teach yourself this through your own conscience. Therefore, as you can see, all 5 parts of the soul are involved in a person's development through such an interesting sport as boxing. A boxer is, by nature, a bearer of high standards, and all these high standards are instilled. High standards, for example, I am never late, I am always early. Why? Because I am a champion. A champion is the smartest, the strongest, the most handsome. In other words, these are the standards a person should hold themselves to from a psychological perspective. I cannot be late. Why? Because I am a champion. Or I cannot do bad things. Why? Because I am a champion. I have to show my strengths. And our strengths are like, well, gold, silver, and precious gems that are hidden within us.